literally saying, I aced all up to level 3 and I missed every single level 4. What would I get?
The actual band.
See, and that's difficult for me.
So then, Mark, if we could just look into, what would it take in the future in the near future, to maybe tie the actual scoring of one of these to the scales that we've seen in the past?
Because I'm still trying to.
No, we have examples.
Right, I would love to see it.
But that hasn't changed. I mean, that's like the way that these are scored have not changed. It's not the pilot type grading that we're talking about.
Okay, no, and that's what I'd love to see.
Okay. And then are you doing different outcomes or masteries for, I know you teach on level and above level, so you've had to do the same thing, and then there's the kids that are going at the high school, so but you wouldn't have to do that to assess those children. Those children are tested at the high school. So say right now you have kids that are on level, and then you have kids that are above.
Yes.
Is it the same?
They have not been completed as yet. They will use many of these pieces, but they will be on this, so there'll probably be more mastery outcomes.
That's why I was wondering if you're using the same one but expecting mastery.
Well, because of the actual spiraling of the curriculum. I mean, solving a linear equation. My on levels are 8th graders solving it. My above levels are solving that same outcome. That outcome will be stretched. And for instance, on this, the on levels do not do rational fractions, and that's a fractions with polynomials in it, which I know sounds like gobbledygook, but the point being is that it's going beyond things, so there needs to be looked at, revamped, and dealt with. Now our level from 3 to 4, or from 4 to 5, we run a year ahead on the curriculum, so they will be using the same, like a 4th grade above, will be using the 5th grade curriculum. Okay. Right, but when you reach that other end at the top, it isn't quite as simple as just taking the year ahead.
In mindful of the fact that I'm not challenging this, I'm just trying to figure it out, because totally. The meetings I attended with the parent community, this was very confusing.
Sure.
And, in the past, and I have a daughter that's a sophomore, in the past I don't recall any tests coming home showing level 1, 2, 3, and 4. The questions may have been on there, but they weren't identified as such.
Exactly.
We're now sending tests home that have, level 4 on them, and a parent looks at that and says, oh, my child didn't get it. What was this? Oh, that wasn't taught in class. Oh, well, that's why you got your grade that you got.
What you said exactly is right, that those were on there, and a challenge question for the top students, but not identified as such. And when we say level 4 here, we're not talking about different content.
Understood.
We're talking about analyzing the content in a different way, possibly.
In some cases, and in some cases, perhaps in math, and in some classes it might be being able to take what you learned and go advance. So it's not analyzing it in a different way.
No.
It's analyzing it in a new way.
With respect to that, exactly.
Understood. And I still have questions overall, and it may not be for tonight. When we get to that, what is the value of that? Because sometimes people tend to assume that knowledge means success, and I would counter that. That may not be true in 100% of the cases. People can be successful, but they have to do research. So, which means that they don't have the knowledge when they sit down to take the test. So, I mean, just, that's food for a different conversation, but, certainly a question that I have. And I only ask because these were laid out as, 2, 3, and 4 right here. So.
It's a good point, though.
So, Marianne, when you're going to grade a test, how when you're going to grade a test like this, how labor intensive is it on you? Because you're saying, okay, question 1 is worth this many points, and I mean,
it's going to be labor intensive in the sense that it will be specifically split out. Okay. I think what Mr. Miranda said is absolutely true. I mean, the kids that take my test do not get 100%. I don't have a class full of 100%, but that's not all bad. You want something that's challenging and stretching. Now, is it impossible to get an A? No. Neither in my class nor under this kind of parameters. So I think it gets a little nerve-wracking in the sense that you're looking at this evenness here in terms of how they split it. If it's not split evenly, like it shouldn't be split evenly on mind at least, and I can only speak to it now. What you're looking for is a quality, and that quality is determined by the basic professionalism of the person who is giving it and understanding of the test.
And I'm glad that they don't all get 100% because
No,
otherwise I would question our curriculum and say it's too weak. But no, I just think, you know, this is more from a communication standpoint and making sure that people understand what it is they're going to be looking
I
at.
think exactly what you said is the best way to explain that these are not equal.
Yeah, and you'll see another example in the elementary school transition to that.
So here are the language arts. It is the draft. Kindergarten, first grade, again, just like in 8th grade, they follow right along, LA 3-1, and keeps going. Now we're going to follow 4th grade, so we'll be following 9, which is demonstrates conventions in original writings. So that is our mastery outcome. And that will be very top, and down below will be all the components that will lead a student to get to their mastery outcome.
Right, so in this one, we're looking at a scale that has 3 of the components, and we're going to look at an assessment type that has 2 of them on there. They relate. These are all conventions, and dialogue that doesn't necessarily fit in with the others. I didn't put a whole assessment up here, but just an example of a question at a level 2, 3, and 4. One change is too that on an assessment now we can put the component right there that the students will see, so they know, oh, we've worked on this in class and this is what's going to be on this test. And I'm big with when it's time for a child to come in and take a test, you shouldn't be surprised. You should really know what's going to be on there and what we've been working on in class, and that should match in his or her mind without you know, any surprise. In a level 2 example, if you look at the blue, it's supposed to be in original writings. So this one, they're really proofreading in a couple different ways. One, to do it with abbreviations, and then they have to write it without abbreviations because the component says that they'll know these things in abbreviations and without. But it's a level 2 question because it's more basic. It's not in the student's original writing. In the level 3 example, they have to write 1 or more sentences on their own, but it's in their original writing. And that's when you look at writing and putting conventions properly, higher skill, that's what we want to see it. We want to see it in their writing. Proofreading and teaching proofreading is just one step of the way to seeing it in my personal writing. So that's why it becomes a level 3. And then the level 4 puts it in a completely different context. This one's kind of fun. So this would be something where we would expect all the parts of an address, and they would somehow have to pull out of their head what a number and streets. And it's a level 4 because it assesses the component with the students in original writing in a way that reflects the students' proficient knowledge in advanced thinking. In language arts, it's different also in a way that we have to make rubrics, say for an essay question or something, that can assess a 2, 3, and a 4. And so I'll have a rubric that says that this essay contains this information, this student is showing me basic information, and then what proficient is, and then what an advanced writing sample could be. So you can get, even on a question like this, a student may be able to get partial credit if they show basic knowledge. Again, when you bring up grading this type of assessment, there's a lot of, say in 4th grade we have 4 teachers teaching, there's a lot of communication and looking at students